Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more slug testing, and today we've definitely got a pretty interesting shell that we've never tested before, and it's one that I absolutely want to see what it can do because I've heard several of you guys say that you like to use these slugs and you see good results out of your setups with them, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what mine can actually do with them. But as for the shell I've got out here today, I brought out some of the Brenneke K.O slugs. These ones are a 12 gauge, 2 3/4 inch, 1 ounce slug, and the back of the box here says they should be moving about 1,650 feet per second. Now I doubt we're going to see that out of this particular setup today, but that is the box claim. And it also says over here that a 5-shot group at 55 yards should give us a 2-inch spread, so we're going to kind of see how accurate that is. In the Brenneke test we've done before, that claim has actually been very close to what we saw, so we'll see what these can do. But as you can see by the picture, they are kind of the Brenneke style slug with an attached little gas seal piece at the bottom there, so definitely a little bit more of an updated modern design rifled slug type of deal here. So we'll see what the old KOs can do. And here's what one of those shells looks like real quick, just to let you guys see. You can see that big attached yellow piece down underneath of the slug there, but it's pretty much your typical Brenneke style shape and stuff like that. So definitely pretty interesting, and we'll see what they're able to give us. And as for the setup we're going to be running them through today, I brought out this guy, which is my Remington 870 Special Purpose. It has an 18.5-inch fully rifled cantilever barrel on it with a Leupold VX1 2-7x28 on top. And this has been a pretty good setup for us. It has been a little picky with some ammo, but we've seen some good results and some bad results with it. So definitely curious what the Brenneke KOs can do through it. Now those are not a Sabo slug, and this is a rifled barrel, but it does say on the box that they can be used in smoothbore, rifled barrels, or just about any choke you want. So we're perfectly fine to use them through this setup here today. So as for today's test, we're going to do it pretty well the same as we always do. I don't have a ton of these slugs, so we're going to have to make do with the ones we do have. So we'll shoot a 3-shot group at 50 yards and another 3-shot group at 100 yards. It's not perfect, but it's what we have to work with. And of course, all of the shots will be through the chronograph, so we can kind of get an average velocity and calculate some energy numbers as well. So let's get you guys a view of these targets. We'll start with the smaller target on top at 50 yards, and then we'll step it back to 100 with the larger target and just see what kind of accuracy and stuff we can get out of these shells. Okay, so I do apologize a little bit. We'll have to do this part in voiceover since somehow or another I lost the footage of us actually reviewing the chronograph numbers, but we can go through them here real quick. As you can see, our highest number was 1,536. The lowest number was 1,089, which I just kind of threw that one out because I don't think that's quite correct. I think the chronograph probably read one of the little yellow tail pieces behind the actual projectile. But going through them here, we had multiple 1,484 feet per second readings and a 1,487, so they do seem to be very consistent. And with all of our readings there, it gave us an average of 1,486 feet per second, and with them being a 1-ounce projectile, that would have given us a total muzzle energy right at 2,145 foot-pounds. So not quite what the box is claiming on that, but it's an 18.5-inch barrel, and I think that's very realistic all things considered here. Alright, so now let's take a look at our accuracy here and see what it actually gave us. And without even measuring it right off the bat, it's definitely far from the worst we've seen. But it's not quite the best we've seen either, that's for sure. So I think it's somewhere in the middle, but let's actually measure it and see what it gave us. Let's start off with the top group, which is 50 yards, and these are the 3 holes right here that we're going to be measuring. Ignore this guy and the guy up at the very top. Those actually came from that little yellow wad piece that was attached to the bottom of the actual projectile. Clearly, at least a few of them came off of there as they were flying down range, which we'll take a look at here in a minute. But let's measure that top 50-yard group and see what it gave us. All right, so that top group up there at 50 yards gave us 2.52 inches. So 2.5 inches at 50 yards. Nothing outstanding, but nothing absolutely terrible either. It is plenty good enough to do the job for you on a deer or something like that. The box did claim 2 inches out of a 5-shot group at 55 yards, so they're not too far off. And that half inch could just be my particular setup. It could have been just me and my margin of error. I don't know, but they're not too terribly far off as for what they're claiming on the box. But let's jump down to that bottom group, which is 100 yards, and measure those 3 holes. Once again, it's this hole, and this hole. Ignore this guy up here. It doesn't matter. That's not an actual projectile. We definitely opened up a little bit out at 100, understandably, but let's measure it and see what it gave us. All right, so that bottom group at 100 yards gave us 5.32 inches. So a little bit over 5 inches. That is definitely good enough for a deer hunt out to 100 yards or so, but definitely not quite the best we've seen out of that particular setup either. Typically, when it comes to shotgun slugs, I like to see 3 inches or less at 100, but that's not terrible right there. If that's what I had to work with, then yeah, it would absolutely get the job done in a deer hunt scenario. And it would appear as though they're pretty consistent in flight as well, considering the group size we saw at 50 versus 100, double the yardage, and that's just about double the size group. So I guess overall here, I think they're pretty middle of the road, at least through my particular setup. Yes, they're good enough to hunt with, but not the best we've seen, and if it were up to me, I'd like it to be a little bit better, but it is still absolutely usable. I'd definitely be curious to see what they can do through a smooth bore versus a rifled barrel, and see if the accuracy changes at all, or if that's just a realistic accuracy number for them. Either way, I wouldn't call them anything special for today, but they did okay, I'll say that. Okay, and here are a couple of those little plastic wad pieces that were attached to the bottom of those actual slugs. And you can definitely see the nice rifling groove stripes down the side of them. But what I'm also seeing is they are just kind of a press fit, it looks like, into the back of those slugs. They're definitely not glued on or screwed on or anything like that. So will they stay attached consistently? That I don't know. It would seem like the rifled barrel might have caused a little bit of disturbance in them or something to actually detach them from the back of the slug, but that is just kind of a theory that would make sense in this scenario. I'd like to see these out of a smooth bore and see if this same thing happens or not. But if these would have stayed attached consistently, would we have seen better accuracy out of them? I don't know, maybe. It's definitely a thought. But either way, that's at least 2 of them that came off the back of the actual slugs. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about those slugs there and how they performed? Like I said a minute ago, I think they're pretty middle of the road, pretty average based on what we've seen as for results out of this particular 870. They are plenty good enough to take out to 100 yards on a deer hunt, but definitely not the best we've seen either. And I'd like them to be a little bit more accurate out at the 100-yard range. I typically like to see that 2 to 3 inch range or smaller when it comes to slugs, but in reality, that's not always the case. Shotgun slugs are far from the most accurate thing out there. So sometimes you got to take what you can get. And this is not a terrible option, it doesn't seem. Especially considering we saw pretty close to their claim on the actual box out of my setup. So how much better can these shells actually perform through a different setup? That I don't know. Maybe better, maybe worse. Maybe we run them through a smooth bore and see what happens. I don't know. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Brenneke K.O 1-ounce slugs? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? And is that a good enough group for you to take out hunting with? Let me know all that down below. But as for today, out of my particular setup, I'd call them pretty much average, but still usable. Definitely nothing special, I wouldn't say. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.